Okay, hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Robert, and today we're going to be looking at two watches from Orient, the Black Ray and the Mako XL. Now, the Ray that I have here is the older version, not the updated one with hacking and hand winding, so it's purely automatic. You can't hand wind it. And it still has the top crown that acts as a date pusher. The Mako XL is a larger, more modern version of the original Mako, which continues to be sold and is very similar to the Black Ray. The Black Ray's, depending on how you care to look at it, an upgrade from the original Mako. It's the same size, but there are some styling differences. So both of these watches are solid entry-level Japanese mechanical divers watches. And you do have other watches from other brands available in this price range, such as the Seiko SKX, but as far as I'm concerned, these are your very best buys for the money, and I would definitely choose either of these over anything else in the same effective price range. These watches have an interesting relationship to each other, and it's essentially the same as the relationship between, if you were looking at Swiss watches, the Omega Seamaster and the Seamaster Planetocean. By the way guys, I'd like to apologise for the shaky camera work in this video and potentially the next one that I'll upload. Between camera tripods I've got a new one incoming, so only the first couple of videos at most in this channel will look this bad, so please bear with me in that respect. Now, this interesting relationship between these watches is the reason for doing this review today, because I'm not personally aware of any videos on YouTube showing these watches together. They've been reviewed individually by many different people, all the different versions of these watches have been reviewed individually, but I'm not aware of any videos showing them together side by side and talking about the relationship between them, and they do complement each other and go together. So having said that these watches complement each other, let's take a look at why that is. Because these are both divers, and they're in roughly the same price range. The Mako XL is a little more expensive than the Orient Ray, but they're both entry-level watches. So you could easily get away with having only one of these watches. Either of them would do for practical purposes. So why might you want both? Starting with the Ray, again, this is the Black Ray, which is probably the less popular of the versions of the Orient Ray that are out there. There is a blue-dialed version, which is the most popular as far as I know. I think you can also get a salmon dial and a lemon-coloured dial too. I have no idea how well those sell, but the ones you generally see reviewed are most popularly the blue dial and also this one that I have here. This is more directly comparable to, again, if we were looking at higher-end Swiss watches, the Omega Seamaster, or potentially the Rolex Submariner. It's heavily influenced by the Submariner style, as just about all dive watches are these days, and it's slightly smaller than the Mako XL, in the same way that the Seamaster is smaller than the Planetocean. It's in a more classic style, which again is the same as the relationship between the Seamaster and the Planetocean. But in terms of build quality, fit and finish and so on, these watches are essentially identical. Each one's just as well constructed as the other, so there's really no difference there. On that subject, one way in which there's no difference is that although the watches themselves are of incredibly high quality for the price, the bracelets are nothing special and roughly comparable to the quality of most Seiko bracelets, if you've any experience with those. If you're a fan of bracelets, if you're going to notice the difference between the quality of the bracelet and the quality of the watch, then you'll probably want to replace those with either a higher quality bracelet or straps of some kind, as I have on these. Now, having said that the quality of the bracelets on both of these watches is inferior to the quality of the watches themselves, the only real deal breaker with both bracelets is that they use very poor quality hollow end links. So were it not for that, you could probably live with the bracelet. They certainly wouldn't snap and fall off or anything like that, and they don't look too bad apart from the issues with the end links. But depending on quality control and so on, you might find that from the very start the end links rattle and that there's a clear gap between the end links and the watch themselves, which is a visual flaw. Or that over time they loosen and rattle and you get the same ugly gap between the end links and the actual watch. So either from the moment you've bought the watch or over time, really that's going to have to be replaced. So that's an issue to look out for, but it's no worse or better on one of these watches than the other. If you buy either of them, understand that it's going to be worth buying them because the quality of the watches is exceptional, but you will probably want to replace the bracelets, so that's going to be some kind of extra expense. So coming back to the Ray, even though there aren't any notable quality differences between these two watches, it's definitely worth talking a little bit about the type of quality that you find in both of them, but especially in the Ray, given that it's the slightly less expensive watch. Everything's just very well done to start with. Everything lines up beautifully, nothing's rough, nothing's poorly machined. The indices are applied, they're not just painted dots. The print it's print, it's not an applied logo, but it's very crisp, it's perfect, and the actual Orient logo above the print on the watch is a beautiful applied design, and it's something you really have to see in person. It probably doesn't come across on camera just how well this is done, but it's beautiful. And there is also on the Ray the same applied logo on the crown. In fact, that's probably the only difference that stands out to me in terms of, it's debatable whether it's just about the aesthetics of the watch or whether it's about care in design, but the Ray does have that applied logo on the crown, and on the Mako XL it's just a blank crown with no edging or anything, no applied logo, nothing. It's just plain. And that's okay, that's fine. But given that they were able to go to the trouble of doing that on the Ray, I think it would have been nice to see on the Mako XL as well. So perhaps the only thing left to say about the Ray at this point is that if you don't like it, but you want an Orient diver in the same price range or something similar, you don't have to go to the Mako XL, because the original Mako does continue to be sold and it's the same size, and it's really debatable whether this is something you could consider as a different line, an entirely different watch, or an upgrade from the Mako, which is probably how most people view it, but the aesthetics were significantly changed in deriving the Ray from the Mako. Again, this is much more Submariner looking than the Mako. The Mako does have more of a unique character, and a sizable minority, I think, of people prefer that. I think the Ray is the more popular watch as far as I know, but I know a lot of people who like the uniqueness of the Mako. And you could also argue that the Mako is slightly more refined, more classic look. There are Arabic numerals in there and a couple of other things that just really distinguish it from any other watch. And that doesn't mean that this is an homage to the Submariner any more than any other dive watch is, and it's certainly nowhere near a replica. No one who knows watches is ever going to even glance at this watch and take it for a Submariner or something that's trying to be a Submariner. And they're certainly not going to look at it and take it for a Seamaster, because you've got the, coin-edged bezel in there and so on. If it looks like anything, it looks like a Submariner. But it's its own thing. It's just very much influenced by that Submariner style, as 90% of dive watches or more are these days. So as far as I'm concerned, that would be the only potential disqualifier for the Ray, is if you were just determined to avoid anything that looked like a Submariner at all costs. So moving from the Ray to the Mako XL, the main thing to say about the XL is that it's just a very bold, striking, modern design. And again, that's really the same as the relationship between, if we're talking about iconic Swiss watches, the Omega Seamaster and the Planet Ocean. And the XL is heavily influenced by the Planet Ocean design, but only in some respects. And it's very important to point that out because certain aspects of the Mako XL scream Planet Ocean, and if you'd only seen one picture of the watch, or if you'd seen seconds out of a YouTube review, you might assume that it's a straight homage, verging on being a replica, and that the point of it is to be a Planet Ocean looking watch. And that actually couldn't be further from the truth, even more than the relationship between the aesthetic of the Ray and that of the watch that it's influenced by, the Submariner. The XL is its own thing, and that's mostly because the dial and every aspect of the dial just screams uniqueness to such an extent that even though the bezel is basically a Planet Ocean bezel, you don't even notice that after the first second or so of looking at the watch. All the indices on the Mako XL are very characterful, very much their own thing. The Arabic numerals that would be there on the Planet Ocean, and which are very large on the Planet Ocean, aren't there. The same beautiful Orient logo that I described on the Ray is there on the XL. There's the date complication. And in particular, the hands on the XL are just a very, very characterful design. I'm not sure if you could call them unique. I haven't seen them on any other watch before. That I can't swear to it. But they stand out, and they look nothing like the hands on the Planet Ocean. So that's another positive in terms of the watch having its own character, which you really want in a watch that stands out this much. It's very large, it's, as I said, bold and striking. And obviously, if you were walking around wearing a blatantly unoriginal watch, that would be even more noticeable if it's a striking, large watch. So that's not the case at all with the Mako XL. It's definitely a standout, it's its own thing. As I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Ray, the only thing I can really point to in any way that you can't even say it lets the Mako XL down, it's just something that I would have liked to see, is that the main crown at the side of the XL is just plain. There's no engraving, that nice Orient logo isn't embossed on it in the way that it is in the Ray. But there's an argument to be made that that's a deliberate choice and that they felt it would fit in better with the cleaner, more modern styling of the XL. So, you know, it's not a complaint, it's just something that I notice and that I would have preferred. One positive thing to note about the Mako XL, if you happen to have tiny wrists, as I do, now I don't know what size my wrists are, I haven't measured them, I'll do that for later videos in which I'll talk about watches that suit small-wristed people or not. But they're like an 8-year-old girls, they're tiny, and for such a large watch, this is all right. It actually fits me very well and comfortably. The lugs, even though they're very long, don't exceed the width of my wrist, and this is also one of the good things about the fact that, frankly, you're going to have to replace the bracelet. If you put a rubber strap on it, or any kind of strap really, that just adds to the fact that it's a lot more wearable than you'd expect on a watch of this size if you have particularly thin wrists. And obviously if you've got standard size or large wrists, then you don't care, and the fact that it's a larger watch is going to be an advantage because it just adds to wrist presence. And on the subject of wrist presence, how do these two watches stack up in that respect? What do people notice about them? The first thing to say about the Ray in this respect, wrist presence and being noticed and so on, is that you can always tell why you're getting compliments from people in passing about the Ray, and more people have complimented it to me in passing than I would necessarily have expected for a watch of its size. And there are people who appreciate quality, and by and large there are people who know watches or have at least experienced really high quality watches, whether that's entry level or right up to luxury Swiss stuff. In fact, one of the very interesting things to me about the things that people have said to me in passing on the Ray is that a few of the compliments I've had on it came from people who were wearing Rolex Datejusts. So that's always a positive sign, because I mean, I'm not a huge Rolex fan, but I love the Datejust, and I think everyone would agree, even if they don't like that watch, that the things that leap out at you about that watch are the classic style, the fact that it's very refined and adaptable, and the sheer quality. When you get compliments on the Ray, it will be because of that. It'll be because of the person who's giving you the compliment and the fact that they have taste or appreciate things that are well made. You're never going to get a compliment on this watch because of the bling factor, because it isn't there. You want the Mako XL for that, not only for that, but people who like large, loud fashion watches and so on, nothing wrong with that, but they're probably not even going to notice that you're wearing the Ray. So thanks for watching. I hope this video has been useful. Guys, if you do have any questions about these watches, if there's information that I haven't given that you'd like, please just ask me down in the comments, and I'll see if I can find that information and get it to you. And I'll see you in the next video.